21. Chapter 21. A Malfoy Christmas. Thank you so much for the reviews. You guys are too sweet. I especially loved writing this chapter. We always see the Malfoy family from Harry's path in the books and in the movies. For once, I wanted to show how the Malfoys are from the inside, to see that they can actually be like a real family with quirks and insecurities and vulnerabilities. I wanted to portray that in all the Malfoys, but especially in Draco. I want you to see how this change feels from Draco's point of view. He's going from being an only child to finding out he has a brother, an identical twin. He's in shock, amazed, and maybe secretly excited. And you have to remember that when he looks at Demetri, he's not seeing Harry Potter, he's seeing a reflection of himself. It's going to be easy for him to fall into the habit of calling Harry Demetri. He wants to have a brother, and it's maybe easier this way for him to adjust to. Easier than admitting that Harry Potter is in his house, most likely. I feel like, in a way, he wants to get to know his brother, not as former enemy Harry Potter, but just as his brother Demetri. So, as the chapters go along, you will see more of a transition in names from Harry into Demetri, as both he and Draco get more comfortable with his new life. It might be different with his friends, but easy for his family to adjust to the name change. And Harry allows it because he knows that's actually been his intended name all along. Chapter 21. A Malfoy Christmas. Harry woke to the soft sound of snow pattering against the tall windows of his new bedroom. For a moment, he lay still, taking in the unfamiliar but comforting surroundings. The heavy green curtains, the warm fireplace that had burned low during the night, the silver fixtures that caught the pale morning light. It was Christmas morning, and for the first time in his life, he was waking up somewhere he truly belonged. A gentle knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Demetri, Draco's voice called softly. Are you awake? Mother says breakfast is ready, but... There was a pause, and Harry could hear the smile in his twin's voice. I thought you might want to see the tree first. Harry sat up, running a hand through his hair that was now unmistakably Malfoy platinum, no longer hidden behind glamours. Come in, he called, still adjusting to the sound of his real name on someone else's lips. Draco entered, and Harry had to blink in surprise. His brother was wearing deep green silk pajamas with silver trim, his usually perfectly styled hair slightly mussed from sleep. There was something wonderfully ordinary about it, so different from the formal, guarded Draco he'd known at school. You look, Harry started, then laughed. Normal. I mean, relaxed. It's Christmas morning, Draco said with a grin. Even Malfoys are allowed to be undignified on Christmas morning. He paused, then cleared his throat awkwardly, pulling something from behind his back. Actually, speaking of undignified, Mother asked me to ask you something. Harry raised an eyebrow at his brother's suddenly uncomfortable expression. What is it? Draco held up a set of green silk pajamas identical to his own, his cheeks slightly pink. She bought you a matching set. She was wondering if you might, possibly, want to wear them. Matching pajamas. Harry stared at the garments, then looked back at his brother. Matching. Draco's embarrassment deepened, and he shifted uncomfortably. Mum asked me specifically. She actually went out and bought them, said she wanted her boys for once in their lives be able to wear matching pajamas. She said she only has a few years left with us before we grow up. Draco shrugged, looking anywhere but at Harry. I didn't want to do it either, but she's convincing. Matching. Harry asked again, as Draco handed him the pajamas, fingering the soft silk fabric. Draco gave a wry smile, some of his embarrassment fading. Well, we are twins, I suppose, he admitted. Harry looked at the pajamas, then at his brother, then back at the pajamas. The green would suit him, and the silver embroidery along the collar was understated but elegant, distinctly Malfoy. More importantly, the hopeful look Draco was trying to hide behind his casual demeanor made the decision for him. All right, Harry said grudgingly, but if anyone at school ever hears about this... They won't, Draco said quickly, relief evident in his voice. I'll hex anyone who tries to spread rumors about Malfoy family Christmas traditions. 20 minutes later, Harry found himself standing at the top of the grand staircase beside his brother, both of them wearing identical green silk pajamas, feeling both ridiculous and oddly content. Ready? Draco asked, though he looked as uncertain as Harry felt. I think so, Harry replied, though his heart was racing with anticipation. They descended the stairs together, their bare feet silent on the thick carpet runners. As they reached the bottom, Harry heard voices coming from the main parlor, warm, happy voices that sounded nothing like the formal tones he associated with the Malfoy family. Told you the tree was too large, Narcissa. It barely fit through the doorway. Oh, hush, Lucius. It's perfect, and you know it. Besides, you're the one who insisted on the imported ornaments from Germany. They were for authenticity. Harry stepped into the parlor and stopped short. The Christmas tree was indeed enormous, at least 12 feet tall and covered in what must have been hundreds of ornaments. Real candles floated among the branches, casting a warm, flickering light over delicate glass baubles, silver ribbons, and intricate decorations that looked like they belonged in a museum. Beneath the tree, wrapped packages in elegant silver and green paper were arranged with mathematical precision. But it wasn't the tree that made him stare. It was his parents. Narcissa was curled up on an elegant sofa, wearing an ivory silk nightgown and matching robe that managed to be both regal and comfortable, her hair in a simple braid rather than her usual elaborate style. Lucia sat beside her in a luxurious black Egyptian cotton robe with LM embroidered in silver thread on the chest, leather slippers on his feet, his usually immaculate hair slightly disheveled as he held a cup of tea and looked thoroughly relaxed. They looked human, happy, like a real family. Boys, Narcissa called from the sofa as she spotted them in the doorway, but then she stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she took in their matching attire. Oh my, you actually wore them. Well, I'll be damned, Lucius said, setting down his teacup and staring at his sons with obvious surprise. You actually convinced him to wear them. Language, Lucius, Narcissa chided, but she was beaming as she looked at the twins. Oh, you both look wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Her voice caught slightly with emotion. I never thought, after all these years. Don't get too sentimental, Mother, Draco said, though he was smiling. Demetri only agreed because I told him you'd hex us if we didn't. I did not say I would hex you, Narcissa protested, though her eyes were twinkling with mirth. I merely suggested that Christmas photographs would be much more aesthetically pleasing with coordinated attire. Neither Draco nor Harry argued. The tree is incredible, Harry managed, still taking it all in. Draco picked out half the ornaments, Narcissa said warmly. Every year since he was 5, we let him choose new ones. This year we thought you might like to help with that tradition. I saved some for you, Draco said quickly. There's a whole box of ornaments we haven't put up yet. I thought you might want to pick which ones go where. The thoughtfulness of it, that they had included him in their traditions, that they had been planning for his presence, made Harry's throat tight with emotion. I'd like that, he said softly. Excellent, Lucius said, rising gracefully despite his casual attire. But first, I believe there are some gifts that need attending to. Narcissa clapped her hands together. Oh yes, Demetri, you must open yours first. I've been waiting weeks to see your reaction. Mine first, Harry asked, confused. But shouldn't we? It's your first Christmas with us, Draco interrupted. That makes it special. Besides, he added with a grin, I want to see what they got you. With gentle insistence, his family guided him to sit cross-legged on the thick Persian rug in front of the tree. The packages around him were beautiful, some large, some small, all wrapped with the kind of careful attention to detail that spoke of genuine care. Narcissa handed him the first gift, a small, delicate package wrapped in silver paper with an elaborate green bow. This one's from me, she said, settling back in her chair with obvious anticipation, though there was something almost nervous in her expression. Harry carefully unwrapped it, trying not to tear the beautiful paper. Inside was a simple silver frame, and within it, a moving photograph of 2 identical babies sleeping side by side in what appeared to be the same crib. The babies had tiny wisps of platinum hair and peaceful expressions, their small fists curled near their faces. That's you and Draco, Narcissa said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. You were only a few hours old. It's the only picture I have of you both together as babies. Draco leaned over to look at the photograph, his eyes widening as he took in the image. I've never seen this before, he breathed, reaching out to touch the edge of the frame. We were so small. You were born 11 minutes apart, Narcissa continued, her voice catching slightly. You were inseparable from the very beginning. Even as newborns, you would cry if we tried to put you in separate cribs. Harry stared at the photograph, watching the tiny babies, himself and Draco, sleep peacefully together. One of the babies stirred slightly in the picture, and the other immediately shifted closer, as if even in sleep they sought each other's comfort. I wish I had more, Narcissa said, tears gathering in her eyes. I wish I had albums full of your first steps, your first words, all the moments I missed. But when you were taken from us, this was all I managed to save before we had to pretend you were gone. This is perfect, Harry said hoarsely, his own eyes burning with unshed tears. It's more than I ever thought I'd have. Draco was still staring at the photograph, and Harry noticed his brother's jaw was tight with emotion. We really were together, Draco said quietly, right from the start. Harry held the frame carefully, as if it were made of the most fragile glass. Thank you, he managed. This means everything to me. There's more, Draco said, pushing another package toward him. This one's from Father. This box was heavier, and when Harry unwrapped it, he found an ornate wooden case. Inside, nestled in green velvet, was a collection of books, but not just any books. These were ancient texts on magical theory, rare volumes on advanced spellwork, and what appeared to be a complete set of Malfoy family grimoires. Every Malfoy heir studies from these, Lucius explained. They've been in our family for generations. I was prevented from giving them to you when you were younger, but they're yours by right. The family magic is in there, Draco added excitedly. Some of the spells date back centuries. I've been studying them since I was 12. Harry ran his fingers over the leather binding of the top book, Advanced Protective Enchantments, a Malfoy legacy. The weight of history, of belonging, settled over him like a warm cloak. And this one, Draco said, barely able to contain his excitement as he shoved a third package at his brother, is from me. This package was smaller but oddly shaped. When Harry unwrapped it, he found what looked like a silver mirror, but as he turned it over, he realized it was actually two mirrors, each one fitting perfectly in the palm of his hand. They're twin mirrors, Draco explained, pulling an identical pair from his pocket. I had them specially made. No matter where we are, we can talk to each other through them. Just touch the surface and say my name and I'll hear you. Even if we're in different countries, Harry asked, fascinated. Even if we're on different continents, Draco confirmed. I thought, well, we've been apart for so long. I don't want to lose touch with you again, no matter what happens. The practical thoughtfulness of it, the clear indication that Draco had been planning for their continued relationship, made Harry's eyes burn with unshed tears. These are perfect, he said hoarsely. All of them. I can't believe. There's one more, Narcissa interrupted gently, from all of us. This final package was the largest, and when Harry unwrapped it, he found a beautiful wooden chest with his initials, DM, carved into the lid in flowing script. Inside was a complete set of new clothes, but not just any clothes. These were robes, casual wear, formal attire, even pajamas and undergarments, everything he would need to build a new wardrobe as Demetri Malfoy. We know you've been wearing Draco's things, Lucius said quietly, and while we're happy to share, you should have your own belongings, your own identity. Harry fingered the soft fabric of a deep blue sweater that would complement his coloring perfectly. Everything was in his size, in colors chosen specifically for him, in styles that reflected both Malfoy elegance and what he was beginning to recognize as his own personal preferences. I don't know what to say, he admitted. You don't have to say anything, Narcissa said, rising from her chair to kneel beside him on the carpet. You're our son. This is what families do. Simple statement broke something loose in Harry's chest, and before he could stop himself, he was crying, not sad tears, but overwhelmed, grateful tears that he couldn't seem to control. I'm sorry, he said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. I'm not usually. Don't apologize, Draco said firmly, moving to sit beside him. This is a lot. It's okay to be overwhelmed. 16 years is a long time to go without a real Christmas, Lucius added, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Take all the time you need. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the family arranging themselves around Harry in a protective circle. The Christmas tree lights flickered overhead, casting warm shadows on the walls, and for the first time in his life, Harry felt completely, utterly safe. Now, Narcissa said eventually, with a bright smile, I believe it's time for the rest of us to open our gifts. Demetri, would you like to help distribute them? The next hour passed in a blur of wrapping paper, laughter, and gentle teasing. Harry learned that Lucius had a secret fondness for expensive quills and rare books on magical history. Narcissa collected delicate jewelry and silk scarves from around the world. Draco, despite his sophisticated exterior, was delighted by a new set of racing brooms and a collection of advanced Quidditch strategy guides. New tactics to try against Gryffindor next year. Harry asked with a slight smirk, watching his brother examine a book on advanced seeker maneuvers. Assuming there is a next year, Draco said, then caught himself. I mean, assuming things return to normal enough for Quidditch to matter again. You're good, Harry said simply. I should know, you've caught the snitch against me more than once. Only twice, Draco protested, but he looked pleased by the acknowledgement. And you got it more often. Competition runs in the family, apparently, Lucius observed with amusement. They spent the rest of the morning in comfortable companionship. Narcissa taught Harry how to select ornaments for the tree, letting him choose where each new decoration should go. Lucius regaled them with stories of Christmases past, some funny, some touching, all of them painting a picture of a family that had always made room for tradition and joy despite the darkness in their world. Draco stayed close to Harry's side throughout the day, pointing out family photos on the mantelpiece, explaining the significance of various heirlooms, making sure his brother felt included in every conversation and activity. As the afternoon wore on, they moved to the smaller, more intimate family dining room for Christmas dinner. The meal was elaborate but not overwhelming: roast duck with cherry sauce, roasted vegetables that must have come from the manor's own gardens, and desserts that Narcissa admitted she had made herself. You made these? Harry asked, surprised. Some of the desserts, yes, Narcissa said with a slight blush. It's soothing baking, that is, and I wanted your first Christmas dinner with us to be special. It is special, Harry assured her. All of it. As evening fell, they retired to the library, where a fire crackled warmly in the grate. Harry found himself curled up in a large armchair with one of the books Lucius had given him, while Draco sprawled on the carpet nearby with his new Quidditch guides. Their parents sat together on the sofa, Narcissa's head resting on Lucius's shoulder as he read aloud from a collection of wizarding poetry. It was perfect, peaceful, everything Harry had never known he wanted. Week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a gentle blur of family time, quiet conversations, and slowly growing comfort with his new identity. Harry learned the rhythms of life at Malfoy Manor: morning tea in the sunroom, afternoon walks through the extensive gardens, evening discussions by the library fire. He learned, too, about his parents as individuals rather than the intimidating figures he'd known them to be. Lucius had a dry sense of humor and a genuine passion for magical history. Narcissa was fiercely protective but also gentle, with a talent for reading people's moods and knowing exactly what they needed. But most of all, he learned about having a brother. Draco was nothing like the spoiled, cruel boy he'd appeared to be at Hogwarts. Away from the pressures of school and the expectations of his peers, he was thoughtful, funny, and surprisingly insecure. He second-guessed himself constantly, asked for Harry's opinion on everything from book recommendations to wardrobe choices, and seemed genuinely amazed that his newfound twin actually enjoyed his company. You don't have to stay with me all the time, Harry said one afternoon as they sat in Draco's room, ostensibly reading but mostly just talking. I know this is your space, your home. I don't want to impose. You're not imposing, Draco said quickly. I want you here. I actually enjoy having you here. Really, really. Draco set down his book and looked at his brother seriously. Do you know what it's like being an only child in a family like ours? The pressure, the expectations, the loneliness. I've spent my entire life wishing I had someone who understood, someone who could share the burden of being a Malfoy heir. And now you do, Demetri said softly. Now I do, Draco agreed. And it's better than I ever imagined it could be. New Year's Eve found them in the manor's highest tower, a circular room with windows on all sides that offered a panoramic view of the grounds. Draco had suggested they watch the fireworks from there. Apparently, the nearby village always put on a display at midnight, and the tower offered the best view. They brought blankets and hot chocolate, settling in to wait for midnight. The room was cozy despite its size, warmed by a magical fire that cast dancing shadows on the stone walls. You believe it's almost over? Draco asked as they watched the clock approach 11:30. This year, I mean, so much has changed. Harry was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the snow-covered grounds. Sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life, he admitted. Like I'm going to wake up back in the cupboard under the stairs and all of this will have been a dream. It's not a dream, Draco said firmly. You're here, you're real, you're my brother. I know that logically, but emotionally. Harry shrugged. It's hard to accept that this is really my life now, that I really belong here. What's the hardest part? Draco asked gently. Harry considered the question seriously. The kindness, I think, the way you all just love me. No conditions, no expectations beyond being myself. I keep waiting for the catch, for someone to tell me what I have to do to earn it. There is no catch, Draco said. Love isn't supposed to be earned. It's supposed to be given freely. Is that how it was for you, growing up here? Mostly, Draco said thoughtfully. I mean, there were expectations. There always are in families like ours. But underneath all of that, I always knew I was loved just for being me. You're lucky, Harry said. We're lucky, Draco corrected. Both of us. We found each other despite everything that tried to keep us apart. They fell into comfortable silence, watching the minutes tick by on the ornate clock on the mantelpiece. As midnight approached, Harry found himself thinking about the year that was ending, the discoveries, the revelations, the complete upheaval of everything he'd thought he knew about himself. Are you nervous about what comes next? He asked as the clock struck 5 minutes to midnight. Terrified, Draco admitted, but also excited. We have a plan, we have each other, and we have a real chance to end this war. And after that? After that, we figure out how to be brothers in peacetime, Draco said with a small smile. We learn how to be a family without the threat of Voldemort hanging over us. We go to university, maybe travel, definitely cause Mother to worry about grandchildren far too early. Harry laughed despite himself. Grandchildren, we're 16. Exactly, far too early. But she'll worry anyway. It's what mothers do. The clock began to chime midnight, and in the distance they could see the first burst of colorful light as the village fireworks began. Both boys stood, moving closer to the windows to get a better view. Happy New Year, Demetri, Draco said quietly, his voice carrying a warmth that was still new between them. Happy New Year, Draco, Harry replied, and despite everything, the uncertainty, the fear, the enormous challenges ahead, he found himself meaning it. I think I'm actually looking forward to the future, even the changes, Draco admitted. About that, Harry said, his voice growing more serious. We need to talk to them, don't we, Mother and Father, about our plan? Draco's expression sobered immediately. Yes, we do. He paused, staring out at the snow-covered grounds. Are you nervous? Terrified, Harry admitted. They're not going to want us anywhere near Voldemort. They've spent 16 years trying to protect us from him. And now we're going to ask them to help us walk directly into his lair, Draco finished grimly. Do you think they'll understand that this might be the only way? Draco was quiet for a long moment. I think they'll hate it, he said finally, but I also think they'll realize we're right. The twin magic, the connection we have, it might be the advantage we need to finally end this. When should we tell them? Tomorrow, Draco said with a sigh. Let them have tonight to enjoy the holiday. Tomorrow we'll sit them down and explain everything. As they made their way back down the tower stairs, Harry caught sight of their reflection in one of the tall windows, two identical figures walking side by side, their platinum hair gleaming in the candlelight. For the first time, seeing his true face didn't shock him. It felt right. He was Demetri Malfoy. He was home. And tomorrow, he would begin learning how to use that identity to save the wizarding world. But tonight, he was simply a young man who had finally found his family, celebrating his first new year with the people who loved him. It was, he thought, the perfect way to end what had been the most transformative year of his life. Next, the twins practice their magic, impressed with their skills. Later, they finally tell their parents their plan to return to Hogwarts together and defeat Voldemort for good. 22. Chapter 22. Twin Magic. So today, while I was on Facebook, I came across this reel where Tom Felton spoke about Draco's relationship with his mother, and it's really short and sweet, and I think you guys should watch it. He describes Draco as a softie and talks about how Narcissa tends to be gentle and kind towards Draco. I just thought that was so sweet and sort of goes along with the kind of family dynamics I want them to have. I tried posting it here, but it was removed. But I still love that it's actually canon and was actually part of the movies. Anyway, here we have the twins trying out some cool new spells, as well as a very important family meeting. Chapter 22. Twin Magic. A few days after the holidays occurred, Harry knew it was time to talk to his family about his encounter with Darby. Harry found Draco in the Manor's conservatory, surrounded by his mother's prized winter roses. His twin was staring out at the frost-covered gardens, a cup of tea growing cold in his hands. "Couldn't sleep either?" Harry asked, settling into the chair beside him. Draco glanced over, taking in Harry's rumpled appearance and the dark circles under his eyes. "Nightmares?" "Not exactly." Harry ran a hand through his hair. "Draco, we need to talk. A few nights ago, I caught someone spying on me." That got Draco's full attention. He set down his teacup with a sharp clink. "What, who?" "Darby." Draco's eyebrows shot up. "The house elf? How did he even get past the wards? When did it happen?" "Before Christmas. I wanted to tell you sooner, but I wanted to enjoy Christmas without interruption. I knew Darby wasn't a threat." Harry explained the encounter, watching as Draco's expression grew increasingly troubled. When he finished, his twin was quiet for a long moment. "You should have told me sooner," Draco said and shook his head. "Darby has known through all of those years. All those years you felt different. All those years you were alone. He knew. That's what bothers me the most," Harry admitted. "Not that he was spying, but that he could have saved me years of confusion with just a few words." Draco leaned forward, his grey eyes intense. "Harry, if Darby can see through glamours, who else can? How many people know the truth about us and just aren't saying anything?" The question had been haunting Harry since last night. "I don't know. But I think it's time we stopped worrying about who knows what and started preparing for what comes next." "You mean the reveal at Hogwarts?" Harry nodded. "That and everything else. Voldemort will find out eventually, not about my true identity, at least not right away, but about Demetri Malfoy existing. When he does, he'll want to meet the lost Malfoy heir. And when that happens, we need to be ready." Draco was quiet for a moment, then stood abruptly. "Come with me. I want to try something." He led Harry down to the manor's lower levels, to a spacious room that had once been a ballroom but now served as a dueling chamber. The walls were lined with protective wards, and the floor was marked with practice circles. "What are we doing here?" Harry asked. "Testing our theory about twin magic." Draco pulled out his wand. "Yesterday, when we were flying together, I felt something, a kind of resonance, like our magic was echoing off each other." Harry drew his own wand, immediately feeling the familiar Hollywood warm under his fingers. "I felt it too. It was strongest when we were flying in sync. Let's see if we can replicate it with spellwork." Draco moved to stand beside Harry, their shoulders almost touching. "Try something mild first, 6th year level, Protean Charm." They aimed at matching coins on the practice table and cast together. Immediately Harry felt it, a thrumming sensation, like his magic was reaching out and finding an answering call in Draco's. The coins didn't just link, they practically hummed with magical energy, the connection between them so strong it was visible as faint golden threads in the air. "Merlin," Draco breathed, staring at the glowing coins. "Did you feel that?" Harry nodded, his heart racing. "It was like our magic recognized each other. Look at those threads. I've never seen a Protean charm do that." "The connection is incredibly stable," Draco said, touching one coin and watching the other react instantly. "This should have taken us multiple attempts to get right. Try something more complex," he suggested, his voice tight with excitement. "Fiendfire." Harry's eyes widened. "Fiendfire, Draco, that's Newt level, I know, but controlled, just a small flame, if our magic really is this synchronized." Aimed at the far end of the practice room, both of them focusing intensely on control, on keeping the cursed fire small and contained. When they cast in unison, what emerged wasn't the wild, destructive blaze that Fiendfire was known for. Instead, a single, perfect flame shaped like a phoenix rose from their combined magic, beautiful, controlled, and radiating such power that the very air around it shimmered. "Bloody hell," Harry whispered, sweat beading on his forehead from the effort of maintaining control. The flame phoenix spread its wings once before they ended the spell together, the magical creature dissolving in a shower of golden sparks. Draco's hands were trembling slightly. That should have been impossible. Fiendfire can't be controlled like that, not by two separate casters. But we weren't separate, were we? It was like we were casting as one person. Harry lowered his wand, still staring at the spot where the phoenix had been. I could feel your magic the entire time. Not just alongside mine, but woven through it, like we were sharing the same magical core. This changes everything, Draco said quietly, his voice filled with awe and something that might have been fear. If we can do this with fiendfire, with any spell really. Do you realize what this means for the war? Harry met his brother's eyes, seeing his own mixture of excitement and trepidation reflected there. Voldemort won't be expecting this. No one will. Twin magic like this. He shook his head. I don't think this has ever been documented before. We need to practice more, Draco said, though he was still looking shaken by what they'd accomplished. Carefully, if we can master this connection, we could be unstoppable, Harry finished, the weight of possibility settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. For the first time since learning the truth about his identity, he felt something that might have been hope. They spent the next hour experimenting, trying increasingly complex, intricate charms that felt could deflect a killing curse, healing spells that worked faster and more completely than anything they'd learned in class. Even simple household charms became incredibly potent when cast together. This is exactly what we'll need, Harry said as they finally stopped to rest. When the time comes to face Voldemort, this is our advantage. Draco nodded grimly. He won't be expecting it. Twin magic is incredibly rare, and most people don't even know it exists. We'll need to practice more, Harry said. A lot more, but Draco, I think we might actually have a chance, more than a chance. For the first time since learning the truth about his identity, Harry felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he wouldn't be facing them alone. Their magical experimentation was interrupted by a house elf, not Darby, but one of the manor's staff, informing them that their parents wished to speak with them in Lucius's study. Harry's stomach knotted as they made their way through the manor's corridors. He had a feeling he knew what this conversation would be about. Lucius and Narcissa were waiting for them, their expressions serious. Narcissa was perched on the edge of Lucius's desk, while her husband stood by the tall windows overlooking the grounds. Sit down, boys, Narcissa said gently. We need to discuss your plans for returning to Hogwarts. Harry and Draco exchanged a glance as they settled into the chairs across from Lucius's desk. We've been thinking about your intention to reveal yourself as Demetri, Lucius began, his tone carefully neutral. And we have. Concerns. What kind of concerns? Harry asked, though he suspected he already knew. The safety kind, Narcissa said firmly. Darling, the moment you appear at Hogwarts as a Malfoy, you become a target, not just for those who want to hurt our family, but eventually, for him. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. Voldemort. He will hear about you, Lucius said grimly. It's inevitable. When word spreads that the Malfoys have a second son who suddenly appeared, a twin who was supposedly hidden away for protection, he will want to meet you, to evaluate you, to determine your usefulness to his cause. The school has powerful protective wards, Draco interjected. It's one of the safest places in the wizarding world. Wards can be broken, Lucius said. And even if they hold, what happens when you graduate? What happens when he demands that we bring you before him? I can't live my entire life hiding, Harry interrupted, his voice rising. For once, just once, I want to be myself, even if myself is now a Malfoy. Narcissa's expression softened. Oh, sweetheart, I understand. I truly do. But no, Mother, you don't understand, Draco said, using the formal address he reserved for serious moments. You don't know what it's like to watch your brother struggle with an identity that was forced on him. Harry, Demetri, has never had the chance to just be himself. And what if being himself gets him killed? Lucius demanded. What if Voldemort decides to make an example of him? What if that's exactly why we need to be proactive? Harry said quietly, exchanging a meaningful look with Draco. We can't just wait for him to come to us. We need to control when and how that meeting happens. The room fell silent. Narcissa's brow furrowed with concern, and Lucius turned from the window, his grey eyes sharp with attention. What are you suggesting? Narcissa asked, though her tone suggested she already dreaded the answer. Harry took a deep breath. When Voldemort eventually demands to meet me, and we all know he will, I want to make him believe that I'm exactly what he's always wanted, a Malfoy heir who's ready to serve his cause. Absolutely not. Lucius's voice was like a whip crack. I won't have you anywhere near that madman. Father, listen, Draco began. No, Narcissa stood abruptly, her face pale. I won't lose you to that monster. We've suffered enough under his thumb. I thought we were finally free of all that. We'll never be free as long as he's alive, Harry said firmly. Don't you see? He'll always be hunting for me, maybe not as Harry Potter, but as a Malfoy he can use. This is our chance to turn his expectations against him. How? Lucius demanded. By walking straight into his hands, by giving him exactly what he wants, by making him think he's getting what he wants, Draco corrected, while we prepare to destroy him from within. Harry leaned forward, his voice urgent. Today, Draco and I discovered something incredible. Our twin magic. It's more powerful than anything I've ever experienced. Together, we might actually be strong enough to defeat him. But we need to get close enough first. Might, Narcissa repeated, her voice breaking slightly. You're talking about gambling your lives on might. Mother, we've been thinking about this carefully, Draco said gently. If we can convince Voldemort that the lost Malfoy heir has finally been revealed, that he's discovered his true heritage and wants to join the winning side, he'll trust us, Harry finished. Or at least, he'll want to believe it so badly that he'll lower his guard. And when he does, you'll strike, Lucius said slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. You're talking about getting close enough to end this war. We're talking about choosing our battlefield, Harry said. I've been a target my entire life, whether as Harry Potter or now as Demetri Malfoy. At least this way we control the circumstances. This is insane, Narcissa whispered, sinking back onto the desk. The risk is worth it, Draco said firmly. Mother, father, think about it. How long can we keep running? How long can we keep hiding? Voldemort will find out about Demetri eventually. It's only a matter of time. But if we approach the situation strategically, Harry continued, if we make the first move instead of just reacting, we buy ourselves the advantage of preparation, time to perfect our twin magic, time to plan the perfect moment. Lucius was quiet for a long moment, his strategic mind clearly working through the implications. You're suggesting we play a very dangerous game. We're already playing it, Harry pointed out. We have been since I arrived here. The only difference is that now we go on the offensive instead of just waiting for him to make the first move. And when he asks you to prove your loyalty, Narcissa asked, tears in her eyes, what happens when he demands you demonstrate your commitment to his cause? The question hung heavy in the air. Harry felt his stomach clench, but he forced himself to answer. I'll do whatever I have to do to maintain the deception. Take the dark mark if necessary. Provide false intelligence. Participate in raids where we can secretly help people escape. But we won't hurt innocent people, Draco added quickly, seeing their parents' expressions. That's a line we won't cross. I can't, Harry said firmly. I won't become a monster just to defeat one. There has to be another way to prove loyalty without compromising who we are. And if there isn't, Lucius asked quietly, if he demands you do something unforgivable, then we find a way to make our move sooner, Harry said. We don't let it get to that point. The twin magic changes everything, Draco added, his voice passionate. When we cast together, I feel like we could take on the world. Imagine what we could accomplish with that power if we had the element of surprise. Lucius moved away from the window, beginning to pace. It's risky, incredibly, impossibly risky, if Voldemort suspects for even a moment that you're deceiving him. He won't, Harry said, with more confidence than he felt. Because I'll be exactly what he expects, a Malfoy heir who's finally come home, someone who's discovered his true heritage and wants to claim his birthright. His ego will blind him to the possibility of deception, Draco agreed. And by the time he realizes the truth, it will be too late. Narcissa was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. I can't bear the thought of you in that monster's presence, after everything he's put our family through. Harry stood and moved to her side, taking her hands in his. Mrs. Malfoy, Mum, this is our chance to make sure he can never hurt our family again, to make sure no one else has to live in fear of him. You're both still so young, she whispered. You shouldn't have to. We stopped being children the moment we discovered the truth about who we are, Draco said quietly. At least this way, we have some control over how our story ends. Lucius stopped pacing and turned to face them. If, and I mean if, we were to consider this plan, it would need to be perfect. Every detail planned to the smallest degree, no room for error. We know, Harry said. That's why we need your help, your knowledge of how Voldemort thinks, how his inner circle operates. And we'd need contingency plans, Draco added. Multiple escape routes, allies ready to help, everything prepared in case things go wrong. When, Narcissa corrected, her voice bitter. When things go wrong. This isn't the sort of plan that goes smoothly. Maybe not, Harry admitted, but it's better than waiting for him to come for us. At least this way we're making the first move. Lucius was quiet for several minutes, clearly weighing the possibilities. Finally, he spoke. The logistics alone would be staggering. We'd need to convince Voldemort that Demetri Malfoy appearing at Hogwarts was always part of some larger plan, that his emergence serves the Dark Lord's interests. What if we tell him that we've been hiding Demetri to protect him until he was old enough and powerful enough to serve? Draco suggested. That we've been waiting for the right moment to reveal him. Harry caught on immediately. We could convince him that I am ready to take my place among his followers. We could say that I have some unique magical abilities. A perfectly reasonable explanation, Lucius murmured, a hint of admiration in his voice. Yes, that could work. The protective parent narrative, combined with your obvious magical ability. But what about the practical aspects? Narcissa asked, clearly still hoping to find flaws in the plan. The sorting, for instance. What happens when Demetri is placed in Gryffindor like he was before? I won't be, Harry said with certainty. The sorting hat will know who I really am. It will place me in Slytherin since I'm actually a Malfoy. I just know it will. Would that bother you? Draco asked curiously. Being in Slytherin, Harry considered it. A few months ago it would have terrified me. Now, I think it's exactly where I belong and we need it that way to pull it off. And what about your former friends? Narcissa asked gently. What happens to them in all this? Harry was quiet for a moment, then straightened with newfound resolve. Former friends, I wouldn't consider them former, just old friends. And they need to know the truth, all of it. Not just bits and pieces. Hermione, Ron, I'll need them as allies, not just as people I'm protecting. If we're going to make this work, we need people on the inside who know what's really happening. That's incredibly risky, Lucius said, frowning. The more people who know, the more people we have fighting with us instead of against us, Harry interrupted. Think about it, we'll need allies everywhere. Auras who can help when the time comes. Ministry officials. Even some Slytherins and their families who are only following Voldemort out of fear. Draco's eyes lit up with understanding. Like Pansy's family, her parents only support him because they're terrified of what happens if they don't, if they believed we were strong enough to protect them. Exactly, Harry said. But we'd have to be selective, and it has to be just the right time. Only people we absolutely trust in the inner circle. Everyone else just needs to believe that Demetri Malfoy is exactly what he appears to be. It could work, Narcissa said slowly. Especially if we can demonstrate that you're not alone in this, that you have powerful allies. We'll also need to maintain the illusion that Harry Potter and Demetri Malfoy are separate people, Lucius added thoughtfully. If Voldemort begins to suspect they're the same person. That's why we'll need to be seen together, Harry said. Harry Potter and Demetri Malfoy in the same place at the same time, not just once but several times, make it impossible for anyone to think we're the same person. There's one more thing we need to discuss, Harry said, his voice growing heavy. What happens to Harry Potter? If I'm going to approach Voldemort as Demetri Malfoy, Harry Potter needs to disappear completely, but believably. That's actually manageable, Lucius said. Harry Potter can't simply vanish without explanation, but we can create a convincing narrative. The pressure finally got to him. The burden of being the boy who lived became too much. He's gone into hiding. But we'll also need to show him at Hogwarts occasionally before he disappears, Harry continued. At least at first. Harry Potter and Demetri Malfoy need to be seen together in the same place at the same time. Make it impossible for Voldemort to connect us. How would we manage that? Draco asked, intrigued. Polyjuice potion, Harry said simply. Someone I trust will impersonate Harry Potter when necessary, make public appearances, interact with students, maintain the illusion that we're completely separate people. We already have this planned out, in fact. That's actually brilliant, Lucius admitted, as long as we had someone willing to take that risk. And eventually, Harry continued, when Demetri starts to gain recognition for his power, Harry Potter could become afraid. Maybe he hears rumors about how strong the Malfoy twins are becoming and goes into deeper hiding. It would explain his disappearance while making Demetri look even more formidable. And if someone comes looking for him at Hogwarts, Draco asked, what if they want to question Demetri about Harry's whereabouts? Harry felt a chill run down his spine. I'll have to be prepared to lie, to convince people that I don't associate with Harry Potter, that I have no idea where he might have gone. Can you do that? Narcissa asked gently. Can you convincingly deny your own existence? Harry met her eyes steadily. I've been living a lie my entire life. This will just be a different kind of lie, one I chose. The room fell silent as they all contemplated the magnitude of what they were discussing. Finally, Lucius spoke. If we do this, and I'm not saying we will, it has to be perfect. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and we're all dead. We know, Harry said, but we're in danger anyway. At least this way we fight back. You won't be fighting alone, Draco said fiercely. Our twin magic, something Voldemort has never encountered. It could be the advantage we need. Narcissa looked between her sons, seeing the determination in their identical grey eyes. You're really going to do this, aren't you? With or without our blessing. We'd rather have your help, Harry said honestly. But yes, we're going to take control of our fate instead of just reacting to threats. She closed her eyes, taking a shuddering breath. When she opened them again, her expression was resolved. Then we better make sure you survive it. Lucius nodded grimly. If you're both truly set on this course, then we'll do everything we can to make it work. I'll begin arranging the proper documentation for Demetri Malfoy. Birth certificate, school records, medical history, everything needs to be perfectly legitimate. How will you manage that? Draco asked. The same way powerful families have always managed inconvenient truths, Lucius said dryly. Money, influence, and very discreet contacts at the ministry. Harry felt a surge of gratitude toward his biological father. Despite his obvious fear, Lucius was willing to help. We'll also need to start planning for the eventual confrontation, Narcissa said, her voice steadier now that she'd committed to the plan. When and how you'll make contact with him? Not immediately, Harry said. I need time to establish myself as Demetri at Hogwarts first, to build relationships, create a believable background. The longer I'm there as just another Slytherin, the more credible my eventual approach will seem. But yes, we'll need to plan for the future as well. Good thinking, Lucius agreed. And it gives us time to prepare everything else. Safe houses, escape routes, contingency plans for every possible scenario. As the conversation continued, covering everything from potential threats to emergency protocols, Harry felt both excited and terrified about what lay ahead. They were planning something that could save the wizarding world or get them all killed. When they finally finished discussing the immediate logistics, Draco caught Harry's arm as they prepared to leave Lucius's study. Are you absolutely certain about this? Once we start down this path, there's no going back. Harry looked at his brother, his twin, his other half, the person who understood him better than anyone ever had. I'm certain. For the first time in my life, I'm completely certain about something. Draco smiled. Good, because I'm with you, whatever happens. As they walked back through the manor's corridors, Harry felt a strange sense of completion. Within a week he would become Demetri Malfoy officially, Harry Potter would fade into legend, and they would begin preparing for the most dangerous gambit of their lives. It should have felt like a death. Instead, it felt like being born. Draco, he said as they reached the main staircase. Yeah, thank you for all of this. I know it's not easy. I couldn't imagine saying this months ago, but it's different now. Draco stopped walking and turned to face him. I have a brother, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for you. Harry smiled, feeling that familiar warmth spread through his chest. Same here. As they headed upstairs, Harry suddenly stopped. Wait, there's something else. My wand. Draco turned, confused. What about it? Everyone knows Harry Potter's wand. Harley and Phoenix Feather. If I'm using it as Demetri Malfoy, someone's bound to recognize it. You're right, Draco said, his brow furrowing in thought. Then his face brightened. Actually, I might have a solution. He led Harry to his room and opened an ornate wooden box on his desk. Inside was a second wand, elegant and dark. I lost my regular wand during a duel last year, found it eventually, but I had to use this temporary one for a few weeks. It never felt quite right for me, but maybe. Harry picked up the wand, feeling its weight in his hand. It was longer than his Harley wand, with an intricate silver handle. The moment his fingers closed around it, he felt a warm pulse of magic. Try a simple spell, Draco suggested. Lumos, Harry whispered, and the tip of the wand blazed with steady light. It felt different from his own wand, but not wrong. More controlled, perhaps, more refined. It likes you, Draco observed with a smile. What wood is it? Harry examined the wand more closely. Ebony, I think, and the core. Dragon heartstring, Draco confirmed. It should work well enough for you to use as Demetri, though I suspect when the time comes to face Voldemort. I'll use my own wand, Harry finished. Harley and Phoenix Feather, the wand that chose me. It feels right that it should be there at the end. As they continued to Harry's room, his thoughts drifted to the twin magic they shared. The power they'd felt when casting together was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. With practice, with preparation, they could be unstoppable. And when the time came to face Voldemort, when they chose their moment, their battlefield, their terms, having each other and their carefully chosen allies would finally be enough. Perhaps the chosen one wouldn't have to save the world alone after all. Next chapter, the twins return to Hogwarts, and Harry Potter steps into the Great Hall as Demetri Malfoy, Draco's identical twin. It's either going to go flawlessly or terribly wrong. Keep reading to find out which one it is. This is the moment. 23. Chapter 23. The Return. Thank you guys for the reviews. I feel like this is a transition into the exciting dramatic chapters. Now we know the story, we're delving deeper into the content. I love putting both the boys both in Hogwarts and seeing how each of them reacts to having a brother in public. Something is so fun about having both of them there trying to fit in. I'm actually working on the sequel right now, as well as a few fun one-shots. There's a lot more content to come. Chapter 23. The return, the familiar sensation of apparition left Harry slightly dizzy as his feet touched the stone floor of Dumbledore's office. The circular room spun around him for a moment before settling into focus. The same cluttered shelves, the same whirring silver instruments, the same phoenix perched regally on its stand. Fawkes let out a soft trill of greeting, and Harry found himself oddly comforted by the sound. His hand instinctively went to the ebony wand tucked in his robes, Draco's gift, the wand that would help complete his transformation into Demetri Malfoy. The dragon heartstring core hummed with subtle power, different from his Harley wand, but reassuring in its own way. Beside him, Draco steadied himself with practiced ease, while Snape smoothed down his black robes with characteristic precision. The potions master had been unusually quiet during their journey from Malfoy Manor, his dark eyes unreadable as he'd facilitated their direct arrival into the headmaster's private chambers. Punctual as always, Severus, came Dumbledore's familiar voice from behind his ornate desk. The elderly wizard looked up from a stack of parchments, his blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles as they took in the three arrivals. "And welcome back, Mr. Malfoy." Gaze shifted to Harry with deliberate emphasis. "Both of you." Harry felt his stomach clench. Even now, even after everything that had happened, facing Dumbledore still filled him with a complex mixture of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and despite everything, a lingering desire for approval that he hated himself for feeling. "Professor," Draco said stiffly, inclining his head in a minimal show of respect. Harry said nothing, his jaw set in a hard line, his fingers tightening around his new wand. Dumbledore gestured to the chairs in front of his desk. "Please sit. I believe we have much to discuss before the evening's festivities." Neither twin moved. They stood shoulder to shoulder, identical in their defensive postures, and Harry realized that even their body language had begun to mirror each other. The thought should have been comforting, but it only served to remind him of how much his life had changed, how much Dumbledore had stolen from him. "We don't have anything to discuss," Harry said quietly, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his chest. "I'm here to be sorted as Demetri Malfoy, that's all." Dumbledore's expression grew grave. "I'm afraid it's not quite that simple, my boy. The moment you walk into that great hall, you change not only your own fate, but potentially the fate of everyone in this war." "Don't call me my boy," Harry snapped, the words coming out sharper than he intended. "You lost that right when you decided my entire life should be built on lies." Snape stepped forward slightly, his voice measured but firm. "Albus, the Malfoys have shared certain strategic considerations with me regarding their long-term plans. Perhaps it would be beneficial for you to understand the full scope of what they're attempting." Dumbledore's eyes sharpened with interest. Indeed, and what strategic considerations might those be? Harry and Draco exchanged a glance. They had discussed this possibility, that Dumbledore might need to know at least part of their plan to avoid interfering with it. "We're not just hiding from Voldemort," Harry said finally. "We're preparing to face him, on our terms." "What he means," Snape said smoothly, "is that the Malfoy family has decided to take a more proactive approach to their situation. Rather than simply waiting for the Dark Lord to discover Demetri's existence, they intend to control when and how that revelation occurs." Dumbledore leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepling before him. "Go on." Draco took a breath. "When Voldemort eventually learns about me having a twin, and he will, we want him to believe that Demetri is exactly what he's always wanted. A Malfoy heir who's been hidden away until he was old enough and powerful enough to serve. You intend to deceive Tom into believing you're a willing recruit," Dumbledore said slowly, understanding dawning in his ancient eyes. "More than that," Harry said, his hand unconsciously moving to his ebony wand again. "Draco and I have discovered something about our magic when we work together, something powerful, something Voldemort has never encountered. Twin magic," Snape added quietly. "I've heard of it, though I haven't seen it yet." Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment, studying both boys with an intensity that made Harry uncomfortable. "You're planning to get close enough to strike at him directly." "We're planning to end this war," Harry said firmly. "But we need Voldemort to believe that the Malfoys are still loyal, that Demetri appearing at Hogwarts is part of some larger plan to serve his interests. And what happens when he demands proof of that loyalty?" Dumbledore asked gravely. The question hung heavy in the air. Harry felt his jaw clench. "We'll do what it takes. We've discussed the lengths we'll go. We'll even take the Dark Mark if necessary." "The Dark Mark." Dumbledore's voice sharpened. "Harry, you cannot possibly understand what you're suggesting." "Don't," Harry interrupted, his voice cold as steel. "Don't you dare lecture me about sacrifice and the greater good. You've made those choices for me my entire life. This time I'm making them for myself." Snape cleared his throat. "If I may, Albus, their plan has merit. The Dark Lord's ego will make him want to believe that he's finally claimed the lost Malfoy heir. That weakness could be exploited. And you support this madness, Severus." "I support giving these boys the agency you've denied them for 16 years, Snape replied evenly. "Harry, Demetri will be a target regardless. At least this way they choose their battlefield." Dumbledore studied them all for another long moment. Harry could feel his new wand growing warm in his grip, responding to his emotional state. The dragon heartstring core seemed to pulse with determined energy. "The risks," Dumbledore began, "are ours to take," Draco said firmly. "Professor, with respect, Harry has been living with a target on his back since he was a baby. We're not asking for your permission. We're informing you of our intentions so you don't accidentally interfere." If Dumbledore was stung by the rebuke, he didn't show it. Instead, he sighed deeply. "And what of Harry Potter? What happens to the boy who lived in all of this?" "Harry Potter disappears gradually," Harry said simply. "In the meantime, Draco and I will work on getting close to Voldemort when the time is right." Snape seemed to consider something. "Demetri will be a powerful new player whose emergence will capture Voldemort's complete attention." "It could work," Dumbledore admitted reluctantly. "Tom's obsession with the Malfoy family, combined with his ego. Yes, he would want very much to believe he could claim you as his own." "Then you won't interfere?" Harry asked. Dumbledore was quiet for a long moment, his ancient eyes seeming to see through them to some deeper truth. Finally, he sighed, a sound filled with weariness and what might have been regret. "I will not interfere," he said quietly, "but I cannot pretend to approve the dangers you're courting. They could destroy not just you, but everyone you care about." "We know," Draco said, "but we'd rather fight back than spend our lives running." Harry felt a surge of gratitude toward his twin. Even here, even facing Dumbledore's disapproval, Draco stood with him completely. "The sorting ceremony will begin in 20 minutes, Dumbledore said, rising from his chair. "I trust you're prepared for the immediate challenges, at least." 20 minutes. Harry felt his heart lurch in his chest, and his grip tightened on his ebony wand until his knuckles were white. 20 minutes until he walked into the great hall and changed everything irrevocably. 20 minutes until Harry Potter ceased to exist and Demetri Malfoy took his first breath in the wizarding world. 20 minutes, he repeated, his voice higher than he intended. That's not very much time. Time has a way of moving forward regardless of our readiness for it, Dumbledore said, moving toward the office door. He paused, looking back at them with an expression Harry couldn't quite read. For what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for. And I pray that your twin magic proves as powerful as you believe it to be. You may need every advantage you can get. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving Harry, Draco, and Snape alone in the sudden quiet of the office. Harry's carefully maintained composure began to crack. 20 minutes, he said again, running a shaking hand through his hair, a gesture that was so characteristically Harry Potter that it made his chest ache. The ebony wand trembled slightly in his other hand. Merlin, Draco, what if this is a mistake? What if? Hey, Draco's hand caught his wrist, stopping the anxious movement. Look at me. Harry met his twin's grey eyes, eyes that were identical to his own now, eyes that held understanding and unwavering support. Are you worried? Harry asked quietly. Draco shrugged, but there was tension in his shoulders that belied his casual gesture. We've been planning this, Harry. We've thought it through from every angle. Our twin magic, the deception, everything. It's going to work. Harry, the name hung between them like a ghost, and both twins felt its weight. Actually, Draco said slowly, I think that might be the last time I call you that. His voice was soft, almost reverent. You're Demetri now. I need to get used to it. You called me Demetri at the manor, Harry pointed out. That was mostly around mother and father, Draco admitted. And we had slip-ups, lots of them, but no more slip-ups. His voice grew firm, filled with promise. From this moment forward, you're my brother Demetri. No mistakes, no lapses. I won't risk your safety or our mission because I can't remember to use the right name. Something warm and grateful spread through Harry's chest. Even now, even facing the unknown, Draco was thinking of protecting him and their larger plan. Thank you, he said simply. Snape cleared his throat, drawing their attention. If you're quite finished with your touching brotherly moment, perhaps we should discuss the immediate logistics of the evening. What logistics? Harry asked, unconsciously running his thumb along the silver handle of his ebony wand. How this will be presented to the school, Snape replied smoothly, and how it supports your longer-term objectives. We cannot have any mishaps that might undermine your eventual approach to the Dark Lord. Harry nodded slowly, feeling the weight of their dangerous gambit settling on his shoulders. Transfer student, Snape continued, from Durmstrang. Your parents, concerned about the rising tensions in British magical society, sent you to complete your education abroad. Now, with the situation stabilizing somewhat, and with your magical abilities fully matured, you've returned to finish your final term at Hogwarts and take your place in wizarding society. Harry nodded. It was believable, and it laid the groundwork for Voldemort to later believe that his return was all part of some grander plan. What about questions? Harry asked. People will want to know why I look exactly like Draco. Let them wonder, Snape said with a slight smirk. You aren't obliged to announce that you're twins immediately. The resemblance is obvious, but unless someone directly asks, there's no need to volunteer that information. You don't owe anyone an explanation unless you feel the need. And if someone does ask directly, then you tell them the truth, Snape replied. That you're Draco's twin brother, separated for educational and security reasons. Most purebloods will understand the need for discretion in family matters, especially given the current political climate. Harry felt some of his anxiety begin to settle. Snape was right. This could work, both as an immediate strategy and as part of their larger plan. A soft chime echoed through the office, and Snape straightened. That's the 15-minute warning. It's time to go. They made their way through the castle's corridors, Snape leading while the twins followed close behind. Harry's heart hammered against his ribs with each step, and he found himself drawing comfort from the steady weight of his new wand. The dragon heartstring core seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if it was already attuning itself to his magic. As they approached the great hall, the sounds of student chatter grew louder. Harry could hear the scraping of benches, the clink of goblets, the buzz of hundreds of conversations blending together. Soon, all of that would stop. Soon, everyone would be staring at him, and his new life as Demetri Malfoy would truly begin. Remember, Snape said quietly as they paused outside the great doors, you are Demetri Malfoy. You have spent the last several years at Durmstrang. You are intelligent, composed, and proud of your heritage. You do not know Harry Potter, and you have no idea where he might have gone. Everything you do here tonight will eventually reach the Dark Lord's ears, so ensure that every word, every gesture, supports the narrative we need him to believe." Harry nodded, adjusting his grip on his ebony wand and trying to center himself in this new identity. Demetri Malfoy. Not the boy who lived, not the chosen one, just Demetri, a Malfoy heir returning home, ready to take his place in the war. "I'll go in first," Draco said. "Take my seat at the Slytherin table like normal. Give everyone a chance to settle before." "Well, before." "Good thinking," Snape agreed. "Mr. Malfoy, Demetri, you'll wait here until I call for you." Draco hesitated for a moment, looking at Harry with an expression that held years of shared experience and newfound brotherhood. "Are you ready? For all of it?" Harry managed a smile, nervous but resolute. His ebony wand felt warm and steady in his hand. "Ready." Draco slipped through the doors, and Harry was left alone with Snape in the corridor. Through the gap, he could see the great hall in all its magnificent glory, the floating candles, the enchanted ceiling, the 4 long tables filled with students. The Slytherin table was closest, and Harry watched as Draco made his way toward his usual spot. Several of Draco's friends looked up as he approached: Pansy Parkinson, Blaise Zabini, Theodore Nott. They seemed to be asking him questions, probably about his holiday, but Draco's responses were brief. Harry could see the tension in his twin's shoulders, the way his hands fidgeted with his napkin. At the Gryffindor table, Harry spotted familiar faces that made his chest ache. There was Seamus Finnegan, laughing at something Dean Thomas had said. There was Neville Longbottom, looking more confident than Harry had ever seen him. And there, at the far end of the table, were Ron and Hermione. Ron looked sullen, picking at his food without enthusiasm. Hermione appeared to be trying to engage him in conversation, but he was barely responding. Harry wondered if they were discussing him. He wondered what would become of their friendship. "It's time," Snape said quietly. "Remember, everything begins now. Every person who sees you tonight will carry word of your existence out into the world. Make sure they see exactly what we need them to see." Harry nodded, drawing his ebony wand and holding it loosely at his side. This was it. This was the moment everything changed forever. Snape pushed through the doors and strode to the front of the great hall with his usual dramatic flair. Conversations began to die down as students noticed his presence at the podium where Dumbledore usually made announcements. "Your attention, please," Snape said, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. The remaining chatter ceased immediately. "We have an unusual circumstance this evening that requires immediate attention." Harry pressed himself against the wall outside the doors, his heart pounding so hard he was certain everyone in the castle could hear it. His ebony wand hummed with subtle magic, responding to his heightened emotional state. "It is most irregular to admit new students mid-term," Snape continued, "but exceptional circumstances occasionally require exceptional measures. Tonight, we welcome a transfer student from Durmstrang Institute." A low murmur rippled through the hall. Harry could imagine the confusion on everyone's faces. Transfer students were almost unheard of, especially this late in the school year. "Joining us today will be Demetri Malfoy." The murmur exploded into a rumble of shocked voices. Harry closed his eyes, trying to steady his breathing. He could hear fragments of conversation drifting through the doors. "Malfoy, another Malfoy. Did he say Demetri? But Draco's already here. How many Malfoys are there? Perfect. Let them wonder, let them speculate. Eventually, those questions would reach the right ears. Snape's voice cut through the chatter with sharp authority. "Mr. Malfoy, if you would join us." This was it. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more living as someone else. Harry Potter would soon disappear, and Demetri Malfoy would be born once again. The first step in a plan that would either save the wizarding world or destroy them all. Harry stepped through the doors, his ebony wand held confidently in his right hand. The great hall fell silent so suddenly it was as if someone had cast a silencing charm on the entire room. 400 pairs of eyes turned toward him, and Harry felt the weight of their stares like a physical force. He forced himself to walk with confidence, the way he'd seen Draco move through crowds. Chin up, shoulders back, every step deliberate and assured. His ebony wand caught the light from the floating candles, its silver handle gleaming. He ran his free hand through his hair in what he hoped looked like casual confidence rather than nervous habit. and continued his measured pace toward the front of the hall. He was wearing simple black trousers and a crisp white button-down shirt, topped with a plain black robe that bore no house insignia. The outfit had been carefully chosen to look elegant but not ostentatious, appropriate for a pureblood heir, but not flashy enough to draw unnecessary attention to itself. Of course, Harry realized, as he felt the weight of hundreds of stares, the attention was going to be entirely unavoidable regardless of what he wore. The silence stretched on, broken only by the sound of his footsteps on the stone floor. Harry could see faces turning between him and Draco, comparing, analyzing, trying to understand what they were seeing. The resemblance was perfect, not just similar, but identical in every detail that mattered. Same height, same build, same aristocratic features, same platinum blonde hair, same grey eyes. At the Slytherin table, Draco's friends looked stunned. Pansy Parkinson's mouth was hanging open, her fork suspended halfway to her lips. Blaise Zabini was staring with the kind of intense focus usually reserved for particularly complex potions formulas. Even Crabbe and Goyle looked confused, which, Harry reflected, was probably not difficult to achieve. The Gryffindor table was equally shocked. Harry's eyes found Hermione automatically. She was sitting rigid in her seat, her face pale and her eyes wide with what looked suspiciously like dawning realization. Next to her, Ron appeared to be experiencing some kind of mental short-circuit, his mouth opening and closing without producing any sound. The Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs didn't look much different. Harry spotted a few familiar faces, but was sure to keep his expression neutral. He had to remind himself that he knew none of these people, other than his brother, of course. Harry reached the front of the hall, where Snape was waiting with an expression of carefully controlled neutrality. The potions master flicked his wand, and a simple wooden stool appeared in front of the staff table. "Please be seated," Snape said formally. Harry sat down on the stool, his back straight and his ebony wand held loosely in his lap. The sorting hat felt heavier than he remembered as Snape lowered it onto his head. The ancient fabric that once fell over his eyes now fit him perfectly. The hat's voice, when it came, was warm with amusement and recognition. "Well, well, Harry Potter once again." How interesting indeed. Harry's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his expression carefully neutral. To everyone watching, he was simply a transfer student being sorted into his proper house. "Already had your time in Gryffindor, I see," the hat continued conversationally. "Years of bravery and heroics. But now you're ready to finally join Slytherin, as I suggested in your first year. It's the house of your father and your father's father. The house where ambition and cunning are valued above all else." Yes, Harry thought back, surprised by how certain he felt. "I'm ready. But are you ready for what comes with it?" the hat asked, and Harry could sense a note of concern in its mental voice. "Slytherin will not be the easy path, young Malfoy. Your housemates will expect great things of you. Your enemies will use your heritage against you. And the Dark Lord himself will take a very personal interest in your existence." "I know," Harry replied. "That's exactly what we're counting on." The hat was quiet for a moment, and Harry sensed it sifting through his thoughts, his plans, his desperate hope that their twin magic would be enough when the time came. "Ah," the hat said finally. "I see. You're not just seeking truth, are you? You're seeking justice. Revenge, perhaps, and you believe your twin bond will give you the power to achieve it. We have to try," Harry thought. "People are dying. The war needs to end." "Indeed it does," the hat agreed. "And perhaps this is the way." "Certainly, it's the most ambitious plan I've encountered in quite some time. Very Slytherin of you, I must say." Harry felt a moment of uncertainty. Was he making a terrible mistake? Was he putting everyone he cared about in danger for what might be a foolish gambit? But then he thought of Draco, sitting just a few meters away, ready to support him no matter what came next. He thought of the twin magic they discovered, the power that flowed between them when they worked together. He thought of Narcissa's gentle acceptance and even Lucius's grudging support. For the first time in his life, he had a family that wanted him exactly as he was, and he had a plan to end the war that had stolen so much from so many. He wasn't going to give that up, no matter what the cost. "I'm ready," he thought again, and this time there was no uncertainty in it. The hat chuckled, a sound like old parchment rustling. "Yes, I believe you are. Very well, then. Let us see how this story ends, Mr. Malfoy, and may your magic prove as powerful as your ambition." Harry felt the hat shift slightly on his head, preparing to announce its decision to the waiting hall. His heart hammered against his ribs, and he could feel his ebony wand growing warm in his lap, responding to the magical tension in the air. This was it, the moment that would define the rest of his life, and possibly the fate of the wizarding world. The Sorting Hat's voice boomed out across the great hall, loud and clear and absolutely certain. Slytherin. Next chapter, Demetri Malfoy enters the stage, preparing to answer a multitude of questions from all the students, as well as have interactions with old acquaintances and familiar faces. Can he and Draco keep up the act? 24. Chapter 24. The Performance. Thank you guys for the kind reviews. I appreciate them so much. For this chapter, for ease of reading, Harry is now Demetri. I can't call him Harry anymore, and when you read you'll see why. Talk about confusing. I know some of you may not like it that way, but that's the way this story is going and how it's going to be. So remember, anytime you see Demetri, you are reading about the Arg Harry Potter. At first he goes by that name out of obligation, but eventually he's going to just ease into it. Demetri himself will explain more about that in the last few chapters as we near the end. Anyway, on with the story. This chapter was fun to write. Chapter 24. The performance, the applause that followed the Sorting Hat's declaration was polite but confused, scattered across the 4 tables like rain on uneven ground. Demetri. He had to think of himself as Demetri now, completely and utterly. Rose from the stool with what he hoped looked like dignified composure. His legs felt unsteady beneath him, but he managed to walk toward the Slytherin table without stumbling. The sea of green and silver robes parted to make room for him, and Demetri found himself settling onto the bench next to Draco. His twin's grey eyes met his for just a moment, a flash of support and shared understanding, before Draco's attention was immediately hijacked by his friends. Bloody hell, Malfoy, Blaise Zabini breathed, his dark eyes darting between the twins with unconcealed fascination. All these years, you never mentioned having a brother. It's complicated, Draco replied smoothly, but Demetri could hear the slight tension beneath his casual tone. Pansy Parkinson leaned across the table, her eyes bright with curiosity. Complicated how? I mean, look at you both. You're practically identical. How do you hide a twin brother? Family business, Draco said, with the kind of finality that usually shut down further questioning. Unfortunately, his friend seemed too shocked to take the hint. But Durmstrang, Theodore not interjected, his pale eyebrows raised. Why weren't you both at Hogwarts from the beginning, or both at Durmstrang? This was the moment Demetri had been dreading, the first real test of their carefully constructed story. He straightened his shoulders and let a hint of his newfound Malfoy pride seep into his voice. My parents thought it best that we receive different types of education, he said carefully. Durmstrang has a more traditional approach to certain subjects, dark arts, blood purity, the proper order of things. He paused, letting his eyes sweep across the curious faces around him. My father believed one son should understand the old ways thoroughly, while the other learned to navigate the political landscape here in Britain. It wasn't entirely a lie, just a twisted version of the truth that painted his separation from the family in a more strategic light. The kind of long-term planning that would impress other purebloods and, more importantly, sound appealing to any Death Eaters who might hear rumors of the conversation. Smart, Blaise said with genuine admiration. 2 different skill sets, but both valuable to the family legacy. Exactly, Draco said, picking up the thread smoothly. Father always thinks several moves ahead. You look exactly the same, though, Crabbe observed with his typically blunt directness. Like exactly the same, that's weird, right? Twins often look alike, Crabbe, Draco said dryly. It's rather the point. But not this alike, Goyle added, his heavy brow furrowed. My cousins are twin, and they don't look anything like this. You two could switch places, and no one would know. Demetri felt a chill run down his spine at the comment. If only Goyle knew how close to the truth he was, and how useful that truth might prove to be in the coming months. The questions kept coming, rapid fire and relentless. Why haven't your parents ever mentioned another son? Were you a secret or something? What's Durmstrang like compared to Hogwarts? Can you do that thing where twins feel each other's pain? Are you older or younger? Why transfer now of all times? Draco fielded them with increasing irritation, his jaw growing tighter with each inquiry. Demetri tried to contribute answers where he could, weaving their cover story about different educations and strategic family planning. But his mind was elsewhere, scanning the great hall with growing anxiety. Where was Harry Potter? The plan had been carefully constructed over weeks of preparation at Malfoy Manor. Demetri would be sorted as himself, establishing his identity as Draco's twin brother, a twin who had been educated in the dark arts at Durmstrang, who understood the old pureblood ways, who might be valuable to the Dark Lord's cause. Then, to prevent anyone from ever connecting Demetri Malfoy to the missing Harry Potter, the boy who lived himself would make an appearance. But the great hall doors remained closed, and there was no sign of the messy-haired, bespectacled hero anywhere. Demetri's breathing grew shallow as panic began to set in. Had something gone wrong? Had whoever was supposed to play Harry Potter been discovered? He thought it was supposed to be Hermione, but she was there, sitting, gossiping with Gryffindors at their table. Don't you think, Demetri? Demetri snapped back to attention to find Pansy staring at him expectantly. I'm sorry, what? I was saying that Durmstrang must have a very different social structure than Hogwarts, she repeated with slight irritation. The way they separate students by blood status is much more traditional. Right, Demetri said, grasping for the details they'd rehearsed. Yes, very traditional, much more hierarchical. Purebloods are given proper respect, and everyone knows their place in the natural order. He let a note of approval creep into his voice. It's refreshing, actually. No pretense that blood doesn't matter. Several faces around the table lit up with interest. This was the kind of talk that resonated with his new housemates, and the kind of reputation that would reach the right ears if their plan was going to work. Are you all right? Millicent Bulstrode asked with surprising gentleness. You look a bit pale. Just adjusting, Demetri managed. It's overwhelming being here. Everything's so different from... The great hall doors burst open with a tremendous crash, cutting off his words and causing every head in the hall to turn toward the entrance. Harry Potter stumbled through the doorway, his arms wrapped around a precarious tower of books, parchment, and what appeared to be several large potion bottles. His signature messy black hair stuck out at impossible angles. His round glasses sat crooked on his nose, and his Gryffindor robes were disheveled as if he'd been running. Demetri's heart nearly stopped. There he was, the original Harry Potter, looking exactly as Demetri had for the first 16 years of his life. Green eyes bright behind wire-rimmed glasses, that stubborn cowlick that never lay flat, the slight build that came from years of malnourishment at the Dursleys. Sorry, Harry called out breathlessly to the hall at large. Sorry, I'm late. Lost track of time in the library, and then Professor McGonagall needed help with. His foot caught on his own robes, and the entire tower of books went tumbling to the floor with a tremendous crash. Bottles rolled across the stone, parchment scattered like snow, and several heavy tomes landed with echoing thuds right in the space between the Slytherin and Gryffindor tables. The hall erupted in a mixture of laughter and sympathetic groans. Several Gryffindors started to rise from their seats to help, but it was Hermione who reached him first. Honestly, Harry, she said, in that exasperated, motherly tone that Demetri remembered so well. She knelt down beside him, gathering up scrolls and bottles with practiced efficiency. How do you always manage to make such a production of everything? Demetri stared, transfixed. Seeing his old body, his old life, his old friends interacting as if nothing had changed was surreal beyond description. But something felt off. Something in the way Hermione's eyes flickered toward the Slytherin table, the way Ron's shoulders seemed tense despite his amused expression. Draco kicked him sharply under the table. Demetri jerked, realizing he'd been staring with obvious shock and concern, exactly the opposite of how a pureblood Slytherin should react to Harry Potter's public embarrassment. He forced his expression into something colder, more disdainful, the way a Malfoy would look at the famous half-blood's clumsiness. But it was too late. Harry Potter had noticed. In the middle of collecting his scattered belongings, Harry suddenly went very still. His green eyes, Demetri's old green eyes, lifted from the books in his hands and found Demetri across the hall. The staring contest that followed was electric with tension. Harry's eyes moved from Demetri to Draco and back again, his expression shifting from confusion to something that looked almost like recognition. Harry, Hermione said softly, following his gaze. You missed something important. Harry blinked, seeming to shake himself out of his daze. I must have missed something important, he said with a laugh that sounded slightly strained. His eyes remained fixed on the twins. Two Malfoys, isn't one enough? Had to use Polyjuice to produce another. The question was directed at Draco, but there was something sharp in Harry's tone, something that suggested he already knew the answer. No, Potter, Draco snapped back with familiar venom. Unlike some people, I don't need to resort to luck to get ahead. This is my brother, Demetri, from Durmstrang. Demetri straightened at the introduction, meeting Harry Potter's gaze with what he hoped looked like cool assessment. This was it, the moment that would sell their entire deception. So you're the famous Harry Potter, Demetri said, his voice carrying clearly across the space between tables. He let his tone convey polite interest tinged with skepticism, exactly how a pureblood raised on stories of the Dark Lord's power might sound. I've heard so much about you at Durmstrang. They have quite different opinions about your celebrity status there. The implication was clear without being openly hostile. Durmstrang, with its dark arts curriculum and pureblood traditions, would view Harry Potter with skepticism rather than hero worship. It was exactly the kind of subtle slight that would reinforce Demetri's cover story while establishing the proper dynamic between them. I'm sure they do, Harry replied, his voice tight. Durmstrang's always had interesting perspectives on current events. Current events, Demetri repeated with a slight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Yes, that's one way to put it, though at Durmstrang we tend to focus more on facts than propaganda. The comment sent a visible ripple through both tables. Several Slytherins looked intrigued, while the Gryffindors appeared shocked at the barely veiled insult. And what facts would those be? Harry asked, his green eyes flashing dangerously. Demetri felt the weight of every gaze in the great hall. This was his moment, his chance to establish himself as someone with the right kind of beliefs, someone who might be useful to the Dark Lord's cause. That surviving an attack as an infant, however fortunate, doesn't make someone the prophesied savior of the wizarding world, Demetri said calmly. That luck and circumstance are often mistaken for destiny, that perhaps the wizarding world's faith in a teenage boy to end this war is misplaced. The silence that followed was deafening. Demetri could feel Draco's tension beside him, could see the shock on several faces at both tables. But he also saw something else, approval from some of his new Slytherin housemates, and calculation in the eyes of a few older students. How very enlightening, Harry said, his voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. I suppose it's easier to theorize about things from the safety of a distant school. And I suppose it's easier to believe in fairy tales than facts, Demetri replied smoothly. The exchange had gone far enough, any more, and it would cross from establishing his credentials into outright provocation. Professor McGonagall appeared at Harry's side as if summoned by the tension. Mr. Potter, please collect your belongings and take your seat, she said briskly. Mr. Malfoy, she looked directly at Demetri, welcome to Hogwarts. I trust you'll find our educational standards meet your expectations. The dismissal was polite but firm. Harry gathered the last of his books and made his way back to the Gryffindor table, sliding onto the bench beside Ron with his usual energy. But Demetri noticed how his shoulders remained tense, how his eyes kept darting back toward the Slytherin table. Well, Pansy said, breaking the spell that had fallen over their section of the hall. That was illuminating. Potter's always been too comfortable with his fame, Draco said dismissively, but Demetri could see the slight tremor in his twin's hands as he reached for his goblet. Is that really what they teach at Durmstrang? Theodore asked quietly, leaning closer. About Potter, I mean, about his chances against you-know-who. This was dangerous territory, but it was also exactly where they needed to be. Demetri chose his words carefully. They teach us to think critically, he said slowly. To question whether a boy who spent most of his life in the Muggle world, who only learned about magic 6 years ago, can really stand against a wizard who has studied the dark arts for decades. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the interested faces around him. The Dark Lord has followers, armies, centuries of accumulated knowledge. Potter has. What? Good intentions and the support of an aging headmaster. But he survived multiple encounters with you-know-who, Millicent pointed out, though her voice carried uncertainty. Has he? Demetri asked with raised eyebrows. Or has he been fortunate enough to escape situations where the Dark Lord wasn't trying to kill him immediately? There's a difference between surviving and winning, between luck and skill. The distinction sent a visible thrill through several of his housemates. This was exactly the kind of thinking that would mark him as someone with traditional sympathies, someone who might be receptive to the Dark Lord's cause. You really think Potter will lose? Blaise asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Demetri shrugged, as if the answer were obvious. I think the war will be decided by power, preparation, and political reality, not by children's stories about chosen ones and the power of love. And in all three areas, the Dark Lord has significant advantages. The conversation gradually shifted to other topics as dinner continued, but Demetri could feel the weight of what he'd accomplished. In one evening, he'd established himself as Draco Malfoy's twin brother, demonstrated his proper, pureblood education and values, and subtly indicated that he believed the Dark Lord would ultimately prevail. As the meal wound down and students began filing out of the Great Hall, Demetri found himself walking beside Draco toward the dungeons. The Slytherin common room was exactly as he remembered from the brief times he'd seen it in his original form. Green and silver, everywhere, expensive furniture, the underwater quality of light that came from being beneath the lake. Well, Draco said quietly as they climbed the stairs toward their dormitory, that went better than expected. Did it? Demetri asked, keeping his voice low. Because I have about 1,000 questions about what just happened. Later, Draco murmured, nodding toward Crabbe and Goyle, who were walking just ahead of them. We'll talk later. The dormitory was a revelation, 4 beds draped in silver and green, each with its own set of drawers and a small writing desk. Draco's belongings were scattered around one bed in his usual organized chaos, while a second bed sat pristine and empty, clearly prepared for Demetri's arrival. Older students have single rooms at Durmstrang, Demetri said, settling onto his new bed. It was true, according to the research they'd done, and it explained why he might seem uncomfortable with shared sleeping arrangements. You'll get used to it, Goyle said with a shrug. Though Malfoy snores, so you might want earplugs. I do not snore, Draco protested, but there was amusement in his voice. The other boys began their usual evening routines, changing clothes, organizing books for tomorrow's classes, engaging in the kind of casual conversation that came from years of shared living. Demetri tried to follow along, but his mind kept drifting back to the Great Hall and the perfect performance he'd witnessed. It wasn't until nearly midnight, when the last of their roommates had fallen asleep, that Draco finally crept over to Demetri's bed. We need to talk, he whispered. But not here. Too many ears. They slipped out of the dormitory and made their way through the common room, past the dying fire and the empty chairs. Draco led them through a series of corridors until they reached a small, abandoned classroom that he'd clearly used for private conversations before. All right, Demetri said the moment the door closed behind them. What the hell was that? Draco sank into one of the dusty chairs with a sigh. That was Hermione's idea. She said that she and Ron should be in the Great Hall when Harry comes in. At first I thought it was a bad idea, but she said it wouldn't have been believable otherwise. It was a rather smart idea. Hermione, but she was sitting at the Gryffindor table. I saw her help Harry pick up his books. Hermione came up with the idea, Draco corrected, but she wasn't the one playing Harry. Demetri stared at him. Who was? Draco hesitated. Promise you won't be angry. That depends on what you're about to tell me. It was Snape. Demetri stared at him blankly. What? Professor Snape. He used Polyjuice Potion and Hermione's Time Turner. The silence that followed was deafening. Demetri could feel his heart hammering against his ribs as the implications crashed over him. Snape, he said slowly, went back in time to pretend to be Harry Potter. Just by a few minutes, Draco said quickly. He took the Polyjuice right after he escorted us here, used the Time Turner to go back to before dinner started, and then made his entrance as Harry. He needed to be seen in the Great Hall at the same time. Everyone needed to be seen. And you didn't tell me. Demetri's voice was rising. You let me sit there panicking, thinking the plan had fallen apart when you knew the whole time. I knew you'd say no, Draco interrupted. If I'd told you we were asking Snape to risk using a time turner and illegal Polyjuice potion, you would have called the whole thing off. You're damn right I would have, Demetri snapped. Do you have any idea how dangerous that was? Time turners aren't toys, Draco, and if Snape had been caught. But he wasn't caught, Draco said firmly. And it worked perfectly, better than perfectly. Demetri ran his hands through his hair, trying to process this revelation. So when Snape was standing there during my sorting, was that before or after he was Harry Potter? He'd already done the whole thing. The books, the conversation with us, everything. That's why he looked so calm. For him, it was already over. Demetri sat down heavily in the chair across from his brother. So tonight, everyone in the Great Hall saw Harry Potter and Demetri Malfoy in the same room at the same time. Exactly. Now, no matter what happens, no matter what anyone suspects, they can't possibly believe that you and Harry Potter are the same person. They saw you both. They saw you interact. You're officially and completely separate people in everyone's mind. And even Professor Snape was in the room, courtesy of the Time Turner. It was perfect. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant and terrifying. What happens now? Demetri asked. Snape can't keep using Time Turners forever. He doesn't need to, but we might need him to use Polyjuice a few more times, just enough to establish a pattern. Have Harry Potter show up for a few more meals, maybe be seen in the library or walking the corridors. Then Harry can gradually become more reclusive until he just disappears. And Hermione and Ron were both in on this. They had to be. Hermione provided the time turner and helped brew the polyjuice. Ron had to act natural when Harry sat down next to him. They all knew it was Snape. That's why Hermione kept looking at me, Demetri realized. She was checking to see if I'd figured it out. Probably. She was worried you'd give something away if you looked too shocked. Demetri shook his head in amazement. I can't believe Snape agreed to this, he said. Draco paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. He said he owed it to Lily Potter to make sure her son could choose his own path, even if that path led away from being her son. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, both processing the events of the evening. Finally, Demetri spoke. I still can't believe he did it. Snape, of all people. He's not as heartless as he pretends to be, Draco said quietly. And I think he understands what it's like to live a lie for years, pretending to be someone you're not. You mean the double agent thing? Among other things. Draco's expression grew thoughtful. He told me once that the hardest part wasn't fooling Voldemort or Dumbledore, it was remembering who he really was underneath all the masks. Demetri looked at his twin, his identical twin, who had risked everything to help him discover his true identity, who had stood by him through every revelation and every challenge. Are you, Draco asked suddenly, happy, with how tonight went? Demetri considered the question seriously. The evening had been a performance, yes, but it had also been his first real step into his new identity. He'd spoken as Demetri Malfoy, established his reputation among his new housemates, and begun laying the groundwork for their dangerous plan to deceive Voldemort. Yes, he said finally. I think I am. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, even if it's terrifying. Draco smiled, a real smile, not the smirk he wore for public consumption. Good, because this is just the beginning. Have twin magic to explore, a Dark Lord to fool, and about 16 years of lost brotherhood to make up for. No pressure, then. None at all, Draco agreed with a laugh. As they made their way back to the dormitory, Demetri felt something settle in his chest, a sense of rightness that he'd never experienced before. He was no longer living a lie. He was no longer pretending to be someone else. He was Demetri Malfoy, twin brother to Draco, son of Lucius and Narcissa, Slytherin's student. And if their plan worked, he might just be the key to ending this war once and for all. He was exactly who he was supposed to be. And tomorrow, the real work would begin. Next chapter, Demetri and Draco have a meeting with Hermione to discuss allies for their upcoming deception. Later, Demetri meets with Ron, who is reluctant to accept Demetri for who he is. All he sees is a Malfoy. He just can't get past it. Is Ron going to accept the plan? Or is everything they've been working towards going to just fall apart? 25. Chapter 25. Allies and Enemies. Thank you to those of you who took the time to leave a review. Love it. This chapter has sort of been a long time coming. I have gone through and edited it so many times, and I keep changing things. I can't even guarantee that I won't edit it after posting. I feel so conflicted about Ron casting the Crucio curse at Harry. I'm so torn between leaving him to just be a terrible person and not ever getting used to the fact that Demetri/Harry is now a Malfoy too, the alternative having them just become lovable best friends again. I want this to end on the note of them being in sort of neutral territory, sort of an in-between, not enemies, not exactly best friends, but trying. It's complicated. You'll see. And Ron will continue to do more growing as the series and the sequel continues. I don't know if it will ever be as it was before, but might keep it complicated because complicated is entertaining. And I like entertaining. Let me know what you prefer when it comes to Rana friendship, an enemy ship, neutral territory, or something else. Chapter 24. Allies and Enemies. After the long-awaited reveal of Demetri Malfoy, the twins had spent hours debating their next move. They both agreed that they couldn't face what was coming alone. They needed more allies, people they could trust with their lives and their secrets. The question was who to approach first. Hermione, Demetri had said without hesitation. She's brilliant, she already knows everything, and she helped coordinate the Polyjuice deception with Snape. She already knows most of what we are planning anyway. Draco had agreed, though with some reluctance. She's a muggle born, he'd pointed out, quick to correct himself. This plan is going to require us to say and do things that will hurt her personally. Are you sure she can handle that? She's stronger than you think, Demetri had replied. And if we can't trust her with this, we can't trust anyone. So here they were, in the same abandoned classroom where they'd discovered so many truths about themselves, preparing to ask their friend to support what might be the most dangerous gamble of their lives. The abandoned classroom felt smaller with 3 people in it, the shadows seeming to press closer as Hermione listened to the twins' explanation with growing alarm. Her bushy hair caught the wand light as she shook her head repeatedly, her face pale with worry. "This is madness," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're talking about walking directly into Voldemort's hands. You're talking about getting yourselves killed." "We're talking about ending this war," Demetri corrected, though his voice was gentler than usual. He understood her fear, he shared it. "Hermione, think about it. This gives us the opportunity we've been looking for, a chance to get close enough to actually use our twin magic against him. But what if it doesn't work?" Hermione's voice cracked slightly. "What if your magic isn't strong enough? What if he sees through your deception? What if?" "Then it's better to have tried than not," Draco said firmly. "Better to have given our all in an effort at defeating the Dark Lord. Better to have attempted to gain our freedom than to wait passively for him to destroy us." He paused, seeing the fear in Hermione's eyes. "But you're getting too far ahead. Let's focus on today and making allies, starting with you." Hermione turned to stare at him, her voice emotional. "How can you be so casual about this? You're talking about your brother's life, about your own life." "Because there really isn't another option," Draco replied, his voice softer now. "Voldemort will find out about Demetri. It's only a matter of time. And when that time comes, he will demand that Father deliver him. We can either wait for that to happen and hope for the best, or we can take control of the situation and use it to our advantage." "But the things you'll have to do," Hermione said, turning back to Demetri. "The things you'll have to say to convince him you're really on his side. You'll have to act like you believe in pureblood supremacy. You'll have to pretend to support the persecution of Muggle-borns. You'll have to—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I'll have to act," Demetri said firmly. "That's all it is, Hermione. Acting, playing a role to save lives. But everyone will believe it's real," she protested. "Students, teachers, they'll all believe that you're dark, Harry. I'm a Malfoy." "They're going to believe it anyway," Demetri reminded her and then paused. "And please, you have to call me Demetri. If you call me Harry out loud on accident—" Her eyes looked glacier, but she sniffled a bit and nodded, understanding. "We need it to be believable to keep him safe for as long as we can," Draco added, "which is the entire point." "I don't like it," Hermione said, wrapping her arms around herself. "I don't like the idea of you having to pretend to be something so awful, even if it's not real. I don't like any of it." "Neither do I," Demetri admitted. "But it's pivotal to the plan, Hermione. Everyone has to believe it, not just Voldemort and his followers, but everyone. The moment someone suspects I'm still the same person I was before, the deception falls apart." Hermione was quiet for a long moment, her analytical mind clearly working through all the implications. Finally, she looked up at them both with worried eyes. "Even if I could accept this plan, which I'm not saying I can, there's still the problem of Ron. Draco's jaw tightened. What about Weasley? He already hates Malfoy's enough as it is, Hermione said carefully. I don't think he'll understand why this is necessary. I don't think he'll be able to support it. Then he'll have to learn, Draco said, his voice growing cold. Will he? Hermione challenged. When have you ever done anything nice or even decent for Ron? When have you ever given him a reason to trust you or believe you're capable of change? Draco's eyes flashed dangerously, and rather loudly he declared, I'm taking care of my brother who happens to be Harry Potter. Isn't that decent enough? SHH, Demetri hissed, grabbing Draco's arm. Do you want someone to hear you? Draco clenched his jaw but lowered his voice. Sorry, he muttered. Demetri said, looking between his brother and Hermione. I know Ron won't like this. I know it's going to be difficult for him to accept, but he needs to know the plan. We can't have him doing something unpredictable because he doesn't understand what's happening. He needs to know that it's an act. And if he tries to stop you, Hermione asked, he's already hesitant about all of this, even accepting you. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Demetri said grimly. But we have to try. I want to believe that he's still my friend, Hermione. Despite everything that's happened, despite the Cruciatus curse, despite all of it, he's still my friend. And I need him to understand whether or not he feels the same way. Hermione sighed deeply. When do you want to tell him? Tomorrow night, Demetri decided. Can you arrange a meeting, somewhere private? I'll figure something out, Hermione said reluctantly. But promise me you'll be careful, both of you. This plan terrifies me. I promise, Demetri said, though they all knew it was a promise he might not be able to keep. The next evening found Demetri and Hermione waiting in an unused classroom on the third floor. The tension in the air was palpable, made worse by the memory of what had happened the last time Ron and Demetri had been alone together. When Ron finally arrived, his expression was guarded, his hand hovering near his wand. He took in Demetri's appearance, the identical features to Draco, the different wand at his side, the Slytherin robes, and his frown deepened. So, Ron said without preamble, Hermione says you wanted to talk. I do. We need to discuss what's going to happen next, Demetri replied carefully. This is our opportunity to work together instead of against each other. Ron's eyes fixed on the ebony wand at Demetri's hip. New wand. Yes. Demetri Malfoy wouldn't carry a holly wand with a phoenix feather core. Too many people know that wand belonged to Harry Potter. Ron was quiet for a moment, still studying Demetri's face as if trying to find something familiar in the Malfoy features. His laugh, when it came, was bitter. Work together, because last time we were alone, I used the Cruciatus curse on you. His hands shook slightly. I tortured my best friend. The words hung heavy in the air. Hermione flinched visibly at the reminder. I know you thought I was Draco, Demetri said, his jaw tightening, and I know you believed someone had hurt Hermione and put her under a spell. I was so angry, so scared for her, Ron started. Scared for me. Hermione's voice cut through his explanation, hurt evident in every word. Ron, is that really what you thought, that I could be so easily fooled? You doubted me so completely that when I tried to explain, you decided torture was a better solution than listening. That doesn't make it right, Demetri added quietly. Ron looked stricken. Hermione, I didn't mean. I was trying to protect you both by using an unforgivable curse. Demetri's voice had gone cold, more reminiscent of Draco than either of them was comfortable with. You looked at who you thought was Draco Malfoy and decided he deserved to suffer. And Ron, you have to just stop, Hermione said firmly before Ron could respond. You're making excuses instead of taking responsibility. Tears gathered in Ron's eyes. Every time I look at you, all I can see is Malfoy, pale skin, those silver eyes, that hair. I remember every cruel thing he ever said to us, every sneer about my family, about Hermione being muggle-born. Those were Draco's choices, Hermione said, her expression softening slightly. Not Harry's. You can't hold him responsible for what Draco did, and I've talked to Draco since, and he's changing too. He's not the same person he was before this war either. But you're one of them now, Ron said, looking directly at Demetri. You're a Malfoy, not even Harry anymore. You're someone I don't know, a stranger. I don't even know what to call you. Something snapped inside Demetri. All the patience, all the careful explanations he'd been trying to maintain, it crumbled. I'm not a stranger, Ron. The truth is that I always was Demetri Malfoy. Harry Potter was the lie Dumbledore created. His voice rose sharply, causing both Ron and Hermione to flinch. Do you think Lily and James didn't notice as I grew up that I was starting to look just like James? That I had Lily's eyes when both of them knew I was adopted? It makes no sense that I would look like a Potter. They had to have known about the glamours. And the Malfoys, Demetri continued, his hands shaking with emotion. They had to pretend I was dead to keep me safe. Imagine having to pretend your child is dead because the alternative is even worse. You have no idea what they went through. You never asked about any of this. You didn't care. I just don't understand how you can be so okay with all this, Ron said quietly. How you can just accept being a Malfoy, and how can you just dismiss the Potters? Okay with it. Demetri's voice cracked. You think I'm okay with finding out everything I knew about myself was a lie? Do you have any idea what it felt like to brew that potion and see Malfoy results? To realize that my worst enemy just became my brother? And do you have any idea what my life has been like to lose my parents, to lose Sirius, and then deal with this? None of this has been easy. Your parents died for you, Ron pressed. Yes, they did. And so did countless other people. People who deserve justice, Ron. I appreciate everything that my parents did for me, all their love and all their sacrifices. And because of that, you need to know that this plan, as crazy as it sounds, has meaning. But the Malfoys, Ron opened his mouth to respond, but Demetri wasn't finished. You need to understand something about the Malfoys. In the very beginning of all of this, I spent days thinking I was going insane. Every time I looked in the mirror, Draco Malfoy's reflection stared back at me. When I realized it was all true, I had nowhere to go. I couldn't tell you because I knew you'd react exactly like this. I was completely alone, Ron. I spent weeks hiding in the room of requirement, not knowing who I was or where I belonged. Tears were gathering in Demetri's eyes now, and his voice cracked. I felt like Harry Potter had died, and I didn't know who was left. But Draco, Ron started weakly. Draco was just as shocked as I was. He spent the first week thinking I was an imposter. But you know what? He came around. He chose to support me, to help me figure out who I was supposed to be. And think about it, Draco was helping me, someone he used to think of as his enemy. Demetri's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. And then you cast the Cruciatus curse on me. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Ron flinched as if he'd been slapped. In that moment, lying on the ground in agony, I realized I had lost everything. My identity, my past, and now my best friend. Demetri wiped at his eyes angrily. When I was completely lost, it was Draco who came to support me. He was the one who stepped up, becoming the brother I never had before. Hermione had tears streaming down her face now, her hand pressed to her mouth. Draco warned me that all of this would be near impossible to convince you of, and he was right, Demetri continued. Even now, I don't think you're convinced. You look at me and all you see is Draco Malfoy. You can't look past the platinum hair and grey eyes to realize that underneath, I'm still the Harry you know. He took a shaky breath. But it was Draco who welcomed me into his life, his home, his family. I have parents who want me, who have been grieving for me for 16 years. Have a real family now. His voice cracked. But I still don't have you. You do have me, Ron started desperately. Do I? Because every time I try to explain, you act like I'm choosing to betray Harry Potter, like I should be ashamed of my heritage. Demetri's voice was rising again. Sometimes I feel like Draco is all I have, he continued, his voice breaking. You have 5 brothers plus Ginny. If something happened to you, wouldn't they support you no matter what? I thought you would be that for me. If you can't be my friend when I need you most, then I'm done. The room fell silent except for the sound of Hermione's quiet crying. Ron stared at Demetri with wide, stricken eyes, finally seeing the full scope of what his friend had endured. Ron's voice cracked when he finally spoke. I never realized how completely alone you felt. I didn't think. You didn't think, Demetri agreed quietly, frustrated. But you're here now, listening. That's something, I guess. It's not enough. I know, Ron said, shaking his head. And you're right, what you said about my brothers. If I found out I wasn't truly a Weasley, they'd support me no matter what. They wouldn't make me prove I was still their brother. He looked between Demetri and Hermione, his expression pained. I've been looking at you and seeing Malfoy, but I know that's not fair. You didn't choose this any more than Draco chose to lose his brother for 16 years. I just want my friend back, Ron, Demetri said softly. I want to know that when this is all over, I'll still have you in my life. You will, Ron said firmly, and for the first time he sounded certain. I'm working towards acceptance. It's hard. Nothing about this is easy, but I'm trying. The tension in Demetri's chest began to ease. So you'll help with the plan. Ron's face went pale. The plan where you pretend to become a Death Eater and get close enough to you know who to. What exactly? To end this. Use the twin magic that Draco and I share to finally destroy him. Then what should I call you? Ron asked quietly. If you're not Harry anymore, what name do you want me to use? Just call me Demetri for now, Ron. It doesn't have to be complicated. Ron was quiet for a long moment, then seemed to inhale deeply and nod to himself. I know you're right, both of you, and I want to make the right decisions. You've proved yourself to be. Well, you are still my friend, so how can I help? Demetri explained the plan then, the deception they were preparing, the role he would have to play as a loyal Death Eater, the terrible things he might have to say and do. Ron listened with growing horror. This is suicide, Ron said when Demetri finished. The most dangerous, stupid plan I've ever heard. Do you think it's something Harry Potter would have done? Demetri asked quietly. Ron hesitated, then reluctantly nodded. Yeah. It's exactly the kind of noble, self-sacrificing, idiotic Gryffindor thing Harry would do. Then you understand why I have to try. Understanding it and liking it are two different things. Ron ran his hands through his hair. But what do you need me to do? Remember that no matter what I say or do in public, it's still just an act. I need you to trust that the person underneath is still your friend. And if you have to say things about Muggleborns, Ron's eyes flicked to Hermione. If you have to act like she's beneath you, then I act, Demetri said simply, and you both remember it's not real. I don't know if I can watch you pretend to be everything I hate without wanting to hex you, Ron admitted. You have to, Hermione said firmly. If you react the wrong way at the wrong time, you could expose everything. And remember, Demetri started, it's Demetri now. Don't make a mistake with my name, especially in public. It will keep me safe. It will keep all of us safe. We can't risk anyone finding out about who I really am. Not yet. As they prepared to leave, the weight of their decisions settled over them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new deceptions, and new dangers. But tonight, they had taken the first step toward building an alliance that might be enough to end this war once and for all. Next chapter, I don't want to totally give it all away, but upcoming chapter is one of my favorites. It's the Dada chapter where Harry Potter duels with a Malfoy. I won't tell you which one or what happens, but it will be entertaining.